I find myself wondering, what did happen to the last 10?
Welcome back, travelers, to this week's episode of A Traveler's Life. Last week, I explained to you what my background was in travel, and I believe I touched briefly on that I have anxiety. In this week's episode, what we're going to do is we're going to dive into anxiety itself, but as a traveler. So sit back, relax. It's going to be a little bit longer episode this week because this is something that I have a passion about and something that I think and feel can help other travelers out there with anxiety, social anxiety, depression, PTSD, any of those types of issues to where being out in public is very hard for them. So, welcome back once again, and sit back and relax, and we'll get into it just after a brief word from this week's sponsor. I want to say a very special thank you to this week's sponsor. When I first started traveling internationally back in 2014, this week's sponsor was my go-to travel kit. So I went to my local REI and I picked up an Osprey backpack. The guys there at REI helped me. They helped me fit it, but I absolutely love my Osprey backpack. I still carry the second one that I have because my first one was stolen in 2016. So this one that I currently have, I've had since 2016. So the pack that I currently carry is a Kestrel 48, and this sucker can hold just about everything and the kitchen sink and the bathroom too. Whether or not you're going to be able to put it on your back and carry it is a different story, but it will hold it. So when I outfitted myself in 2016 after my previous bag was stolen with all of my gear in it, I bought the 48 because the one that I had before that I think was a 36, and it just wasn't enough space. So this one I can carry all of my camping gear. I can carry tent, sleeping bag, pad. I can carry all of my food. I can carry all of my toiletries, and on top of all that, I can carry like a week's worth of clothes in this bag. And then on top of it, I can also strap to the outside. I can strap there's multiple straps on the outside of it. I can strap my hiking poles. I can even strap a snowboard to the back of this thing if I want to. I can strap my yoga mat to it. This thing has been to roughly 13 different countries on 3 different continents since 2016, and it is still in amazing shape. So my recommendation for you, if you are just starting traveling, or if you're a seasoned traveler and you've never had an Osprey backpack, I highly recommend Osprey and their gear because they are tough, they are lightweight, and they are resilient. Now, this 48, I can pack up to 25 kilos in it, but my max carry weight in Nepal, when I carried it in Nepal for 3 weeks, was right at 20 kilos. And that's clothes, food, everything. Highly recommend Osprey backpacks. And if you want to see their latest deals, click the link below in the comment section in the captions and go take a look at their website. Again, a special thank you to this week's sponsor, Osprey Backpacks, for their amazing gear and their ability to support travelers around the world. All right, welcome back. This week's episode is unscripted. This information is going to come at you straight as I'm thinking about it. So I invite you to please be patient and listen along. I have a bit of a lisp in my tongue this morning or today, and I am trying to get this out without reading a script and messing things up. I might mess things up a little bit, but that's the whole part of doing this. It's making mistakes and learning from them and moving forward. So I've had anxiety my entire life. I was severely bullied when I was a kid. I was also put into the hospital when I was a kid from bullying. And I've been an introvert my entire life. I was very comfortable being by myself. I've always tried to put myself out there, being a firefighter, being a photographer, yoga teacher, being in multiple relationships and things like that. But the anxiety was always there, always in the background. And people never understood why I never wanted to go out, why I never wanted to be in social situations, why I never wanted to go dancing. I preferred to go to the movies instead, because even though you're in a crowd, you're in a darkened place. And it was the comfortable thing, it was that thing to where I didn't have to interact with people on a high level. I never liked office parties. I hate office parties. I could sit at my desk and be able to talk to people every once in a while at an office, but you get me in a social situation for office parties and I'm ready to run for the hills. I don't know if any of you have ever lived in Austin, but back in 2014, 2015, they had this thing called meetups. And all the way back to, I think, 2010, 2011, they had this meetup group. And I used to go to those meetup groups and teach. And that was one of the ways I could cope. People were there around me, but I was the speaker. I was the person that was teaching to a group. They were there to listen. I didn't have to interact with them except for question and answer sessions, and I was okay with that. But I got invited to this one Taco Tuesday. Everybody's heard of Taco Tuesday. And it was a whole bunch of people, like 30 or 40 people, all meeting up at this one taco place there in North Austin. And I found myself wanting to go and got all ready and drove 3/4 of the way there and said, nope, turned around and went right back home. And spent the rest of the night and the rest of the next few days beating myself up for not going, because I kind of really wanted to go. But, those scenarios and those voices, that the feelings inside of you, the anxiety, it manifests itself in different ways for each of us. And what it did for me at that point was, am I going to be accepted? That's the biggest one. The biggest one that we look at being social anxiety is, will they accept me for who I am? And I learned through yoga and meditation to not worry so much about how other people perceive me, but how I absolutely perceive myself. So even though I have anxiety still, the yoga and the meditation have always helped me ever since I started taking yoga in 2015, actually. I would spend 3 hours a day in class, 3 to 4 days a week, learning the process, learning yoga, and just becoming a better human inside, and the nurturing and the caring of the yoga teachers that are still to this day my friends truly helped me. Talking with my friend who got me into yoga, being able to walk, and we would always go for a walk after yoga class. We'd go get something to eat. We'd go walk up and down Congress Street. And talking with her and having the ability to open up with someone else helped as well. Now, I'm not saying that you need to seek counseling if you want to travel with anxiety, but you need to have that person that you can talk to. She and I worked in Japan together. Well, I worked there. She visited there and played while I was working. But she and I were in Japan together on multiple different occasions. And every day that we could, we would walk around the neighborhood and just talk. We would share our feelings of the day. We would relieve stress by just talking with each other. And it was one of the things that I looked forward to every single day. So going back to the severe anxiety part, when in 2016, when all of my gear was stolen, I was 3 weeks away from heading to Brazil for a 6-week project where I was helping a couple of gentlemen build a retreat in Barra da Lagoa, Santa Catarina Island in Florianopolis, Brazil. And because of the trauma and all of my crap anxiety that I had and all the stuff that was still sitting with me, even after spending all that time, learning yoga, and the day that stuff, to backtrack for just a second, the day that stuff was taken, I was having dinner with that same friend who started me on the path of yoga, and we had left all of our stuff in my truck in a parking lot in Austin to a vegan restaurant, and we were inside for no more than 30 minutes. And I come back out and I let her back into the truck, and all her stuff's still sitting there on the floor. But when I walked around to the other side of the truck, I noticed one of my camera cases was laying on the ground. So I thought nothing of it. I thought that I dropped it when I opened the door. And then I just casually just tossed it in the back seat. But when I got back into my truck and I looked in my back seat, it was completely empty. And she looked over at me and she said, "What?" And I said, "All my stuff's gone." And she says, "You're kidding." And I said, "No." I said, "All my stuff is gone." And I opened my door, and I opened the back door, and sure enough, everything that I had back there, my osprey bag, my medical kit, all of the other 2 bags that I had packed for traveling to Brazil, my backpack with all of my book notes, laptop, everything, my passport was in it, my phone. Pretty much my entire life was sitting in the back seat of that truck because I was getting ready to travel full time at that point. I had just quit my job as an EMT, and I was getting ready to leave the country and pretty much not come back. I had enough savings to where I could do that for a while and travel, and that my savings was gone because of having to get a new passport, resupply myself. I had to buy her camera, which was luckily still sitting on the floorboard on the other side, including her $700 in cash was still sitting there. But that just dumped onto my anxiety of trying to get everything, straightened back out. And she looks over at me and she asks me, "How can you be so calm?" Because I was completely calm. And I didn't know about the anxiety portion of it and the trauma portion of it until 3 or 4 weeks later when I am around 20 other people that I don't know. And it starts coming out. But in that moment, I was calm. And I was calm because of the teachings of the yoga and the meditation that she had led me to. I said, there's nothing I can do about it at this point. It doesn't help me to be upset. And this is one of the lessons that I had learned, was that it doesn't help me to be upset. I have to process it, and I have to literally just be calm and see the situation for what it is. It's gone. I can't replace it. Now, I freaked out the next day when I went looking for it, because I was looking for homeless people. I was looking for anybody. I was looking for the car that was sitting beside me. I was going to all the businesses to see if any of them had video cameras. I went to the Austin Police Department. I filed a police report. They didn't care. They cared absolutely not one single bit. I had to take pictures of my door where the people had busted through the lock. It was one thing after another. And then having to drive back and forth to Houston, because that was the place where I needed to get my Brazil passport, or my visa redone, and pick up my passport, because that was the closest place, and that was like 2.5 hours away. So I'm burning through my savings at that point. And by the time I get down to Brazil, instead of close to $4,000, I've got less than $1,000 for a 6-week travel stay in Brazil, and to be able to fly back to the U.S., which I'd already had flights back, but I had to make plans to work somewhere, because I was going to Japan to work for Japan in the winter. So it's all piled on top of piling on top on piling on top on piling on top. And it led to some serious issues with being in the place with the people. But here's the good part about this. These were some of the most understanding and loving people I have ever met, and many of them are still my friends to this day, because every one of them saw what was going on with me. One of them would sit me down and talk to me and go through the process with me, and then another one would sit me down and go through the process with me, and it helped every single day. And even though I still had issues and I still had outbursts or things like that, they all still cared about me. So my point with that is, if you're going to travel and you're going to be in a group of people, or you're going to travel solo and then want to meet up with groups of people, know in yourself that you can handle it. When issues arise and when issues come up, like they often will, especially in social situations where you have people that push buttons that they don't know that you have, and those buttons get pushed and pushed and pushed, and somebody's sitting there going tap, 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 and you forgot how to breathe. Breathe. Just breathe. Just close your eyes, walk away, and breathe. Travel is one of the hardest things to do for someone with social or any kind of anxiety, yet it is also one of the most healing things that you can do for anyone with social or any kind of anxiety, because it allows you to challenge yourself, and it allows you to break outside of boundaries that you have set for yourself and you didn't even know that you had. And it allows you to step outside of those comfort zones that you've built up around yourself that keep the anxiety. They keep the anxiety in check, but they also allow you to keep the anxiety when you set those boundaries. So when you step outside of those boundaries, you show that portion of you that has the anxiety that, yes, you can do this. Even with the anxiety, you can still do this. And then you challenge yourself to do one more thing that you normally wouldn't do. You challenge yourself to do one more thing that you normally wouldn't do. And so on and so forth until you get to a place to where you're standing in front of a group of people in Chiang Mai, Thailand, whom you've never met before for open mic night, and you're given a 10-minute dissertation. Now, if you're like me, I kind of got into it and cried just a little bit because it was pretty moving. But you disconnect from those people around you and you talk to yourself. You give that speech to yourself, and those people around you will still listen. If you need to interact with another person, make it one person at a time. Find somebody that, if somebody comes up and approaches you and says, hey, you want to go do something? Don't go to your immediate no. Don't go to that safe place and says, no, I'd rather sit in my bunk and play a video game versus going out into the beautiful tropical island of Bali and go for a scooter ride somewhere just to be out. That was me. That was me, especially after 2018 when I got back from Nepal. But that's another story for another time. My point in the majority of all of this is that traveling with anxiety is easy, and it's also hard. The tools that I've used and the tools that I have learned in how to cope with it are as follows. Yoga. I cannot stress and recommend yoga more than I became a teacher in 2018 because of how well it healed me and the drive in myself to heal others with it. And I'm in the process of restarting my yoga channel on YouTube so that I can actually help persons with PTSD, with anxiety, with depression, and assist them in getting back out into the world. People will tell you to act like a normal human being, but there is no normal. Their version, their idea of what normal is, doesn't exist. Normal is what you feel on a daily basis, whether you have anxiety or whether you don't have anxiety, whether you have depression or you don't have depression, whether you're happy or you're sad. That is your normal for that moment. So when they tell you to be like a normal human being, just be yourself. 2, and this goes along with the yoga, meditation. Learn the art of meditation and the art of breathing. There is a simple breathing exercise that will not only lower your blood pressure, but it will lower your heart rate, increase your serotonin, and it will make your life so much easier when you learn it. It'll allow you to step onto an airplane. It'll allow you to not be afraid when you're trying to do something. And it'll allow you to step outside of your comfort zone easier. And it's basically it's a 4-second breath in, a 4-second hold, a 4-second breath out, and a 4-second hold. And the longer you increase that, you can get up to 6, you can get up to 7 seconds, depending upon your lung capacity, but you start with 4 seconds. And by the time you've gone through a full minute of that 4 seconds, your blood pressure is already lowered, your muscles are already starting to relax. And what it does is it kicks in that parasympathetic nervous system and overrides that fight or flight response and tells your body and your mind and your heart and all the chemicals that are in there that everything is okay. And when you do that, you're capable of being in a situation and being around people and just listening. And when you have that person that's yammering in the side of your ear, that's had like 16 different beers and wants to, chat you up, and all you want to do is run for the hills, just breathe. Just breathe. Third, have a friend that you can talk to, someone that has been in your life for a long period of time and knows the things that you go through, and is a supportive person, not somebody that tells you what they think you want to hear, but somebody that will actually actively listen. And if you can't find that person, and this is not one of the sponsors for this episode, but there's an app out now called BetterHelp. And I've actually considered it. But here lately, my anxiety and my ability to actually interact with other people has actually grown. And that's because I've learned a few new key things to where I am a better person, and I'm able to actually breathe and maintain my calmness so that I can go into a situation and be able to smile. And you need to get to that step, but you need to do all the baby steps between them. Travel helps. Being a solo traveler with anxiety is not a good idea. Now, I was a solo traveler for every bit of my trips all over the world. However, that's solo from one point to the next. I would make friends. Even though it was hard for me to make friends, I would still make friends anywhere that I went, because I knew that it was good for me to do so. That was the whole reason why I was out there. That's the whole reason why we travel. We want to see new things, we want to learn new experiences, and we want to meet new people. One of my trips to Alaska, this was 2015. I stayed at an Airbnb that was also a hostel. It was a free hostel. It was a couch surfing location. So I had the Airbnb room for the first 2 nights. And I come out, and there's 20 people laying all over the house. They're on the couches, they're on the floor, they're on mats down in the basement. Anywhere they could lay something and lay out their sleeping bag, that's where they were sleeping. And everybody had access to the same bathrooms, except for mine, because I was the Airbnb-er. But it was one of the coolest things that I had ever done. Because I came out of the Airbnb room. I was in Alaska for almost a week. I came out of the Airbnb room because I figured, why spend the money in the Airbnb when I can actually couch surf here for free? So I jumped onto the couch surfing side, and I wound up making 8 friends from Denmark, Sweden, and they were in Alaska working in a cannery. And we all borrowed the guy's his big camper van, and then we drove down to Kenai Peninsula, and that was one of my first long hikes. I drove us down to the Kenai Peninsula. We all stayed in the camper van. I think there was 5 of us in there because that's all that would fit. And we all went for a hike in the mountain down there, and we all drove back within the next day and a half, and we just had a blast. And some of them are still my friends. I know I still have one of them still available on my Instagram page. But you never know how you're going to make friends. You never know if you will make friends unless you get out there. So, dear listener, if you ever, absolutely, I mean ever, need someone to talk to, advice on how to travel as someone with anxiety, as a solo traveler, any question that you may have in regards to traveling, whether it's or depression or anxiety or even PTSD, and yes, I have it, um, reach out to me. I will listen. I will give you advice if you ask for it, if you want it, but I will always listen, and I'll always be there. Unlike people that tell you that they're not going to be there, I will always be there. I have friends to this day that still call me just to be able to talk to me and relieve the stress of their day. Sometimes it is difficult for me, sometimes it is difficult for them. But for the most part, it becomes cathartic for both of us. So, any of you listeners that have that need or that desire to talk, I will leave my email in the comments below. Send me an email and we can discuss it that way first. And if you feel comfortable with a phone call, I'll give you my phone number. I'll always be available to anybody for anything around the world if you want to talk, especially about traveling with anxiety. I know this has been a long episode, but like I said, this has been something that I've wanted to put out there for a very long time. I hope that you find it remotely useful and inspiring. And I hope that it allows you to have the courage to finally follow your dreams and go do those things that you've always wanted to do. Because the world's out there waiting on you. It'll keep waiting on you until you're ready. But until you get out there and find out what you can do, your anxiety will tell you you're never going to be ready. So you have to overlook it and bypass it and go anyways. And I hope this helps. Stay tuned for next week's episode. At this moment, I'm thinking about making it a travel episode, travel related episode. I'm not really sure if I want to do Brazil, Iceland. I think what we're going to do is we're going to do Iceland because that was my very first international trip. So I'm going to cover Iceland next week and some of the beautiful places and some of the things that you can do in Iceland and how to travel in Iceland. So we just made up our mind with that. So thank you again for tuning into this week's episode, and I hope again that you found it useful. And if you ever need to talk, you know where I'm at. The Traveler's Life podcast is all about creating a life of travel and a life of freedom for everyone out there. Thank you again. I truly want to thank you for tuning in for this week's episode. Like I said, this was a huge concern of mine and always has been, of how to relay that any person with anxiety, any person with PTSD, it's hard. Depression, I mean, up till the last month or so ago, I had severe depression. I was procrastinating every day. Procrastination is a form of depression. It's one of the things that you do when you're depressed. You procrastinate. You don't do things. So I understand it, and I wanted to get it out there into the void for anybody else that can hear it and let you know that there is someone out there that says, I'm here. I'll listen. So like I said in the episode, if you feel the need to, reach out to me. My email address will be below. If you found this episode helpful, I ask that you pretty please, hit the like and subscribe buttons and just leave me a comment below. If you feel that you're capable of telling me in the comments what kind of anxiety that you have, what you want to do with your travel, how you want to travel, and things like that, leave me a comment. Just let me know if this episode helped. If you don't feel that you can leave the comment, you always have the email portion of it. And all the comments are screened. So before a comment goes live, I actually look at them and read them to make sure that there are no trolls out there who are hateful and spiteful and just want to bring down the world. So if you leave me a comment and you want it to remain private, just know that it doesn't go public until I publish it, and you can leave me a comment and I will respond back to you in the form that you request, whether it's via email or anything like that. But if you really need to leave me a comment and want to talk to me, just send me an email. Thank you again for tuning in to this week's episode, and I highly recommend that you go visit this week's sponsor. The link below leads directly to their page. It is a compensation link, meaning I get paid if you purchase anything, and I'll put that disclaimer down there in the comment section as well. But it's one of the ways that I support myself by being able to do these episodes. And I also have a Patreon page, and the link for that will be down below as well. And Patreon members will get a free, well, it's not free. Patreon members get an additional midweek episode. It's going to be normally a little bit shorter than the normal episodes, but they do get a midweek episode as well. And there's a few other little perks in there. Just visit the Patreon page, see if you like it. It's the lowest one. It's $5. It's just one time a month. And it helps me to be able to put these together because these take up a little bit of time. This one here has already run over an hour, and I still have to do all the video portion of it. So, you know, they take a little bit of time, and the Patreon stuff helps me to be able to actually get out a little bit more content to you guys versus, and I'm near an airport. I don't know if you can hear that. I apologize. I'm near NASA down here in Houston today, just for a day, and I parked near their airport where they're taking off on the jets. You know, the Patreon page helps me to be able to, just like the sponsors, it helps me to be able to create better episodes and more episodes. And what I'd eventually like to get up to is at least 2 episodes a week, plus the mini episode for the Patreon members, and actually be able to do full video podcasting as well. This podcast is available through YouTube, Patreon, and as soon as Patreon uploads it to Spotify, it's available on Spotify as well. So thank you again. Please comment, like, share, and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell and get notifications of when the new episode launches. These are scheduled every Sunday to launch, and the Patreon ones will be scheduled for every Wednesday. I look forward to having you back, dear listener, on next week's episode for Iceland. Stay tuned for that one. Thank you very much, and everyone have a beautiful day.
29 and I find myself wondering what did happen to the last 10. I ran away with my life, fast forward, never turn back again.